Okay, good evening everyone. Yesterday we have already covered a lot of question of environmental geography. So now I'm going to discuss certain issues and with respect to the protected areas. Yesterday what we have started, just to give you a little brief about what we have done. So let's start on with the protected areas. So certain protected areas that we were referring to in yesterday's class, the first protected area that we have talked about is National Park. I think that is the only park that we could do yesterday. Now today I'll be covering more parks. For example, I will be covering some Kaziranga Park examples of the parks which are existing. For example, one is there, Kaibul Lamjao Park. It is important. Then it is in Manipur. Although we have many parks which are there that you have to do in GS portion, whenever you do it, you learn by heart all the national park which is present in different states. But today I'll be only discussing some of the very important national parks so that you can write. So Kaibul Lamjao Park is very important with respect to that it is having a Loktak lake, and it is only floating park that we are having, right? So this is where in Manipur, right? If you want to write the state location, write down Kaibul Lamjao Park is in Manipur. It is having what? Loktak Lake. This Loktak Lake is what? It is a part of a Ramsar site. I hope everybody knows what is Ramsar site by now, because we have already discussed Ramsar site in detail in the previous classes. So there should be no doubt with that. Also, this Loktak Lake is also included in the Montreux record. Next is what? There is a specific species which is important to this area, which you call it as dancing deer. Another name for it is Sangai deer. And it is also the state animal of Manipur. It is also a state animal of Manipur. So this is one example that you can note down with respect to Kaibul Lamjao National Park. Now, next national park that we are having is Namdapha. Again, important national park with respect to Arunachal Pradesh. This particular park is important as in it is having a lot of species. For example, one is Hullock gibbon. Now, Hullock gibbon is also a state animal of Arunachal, and this is important. This particular species, Hullock gibbon, is specific. It is endemic, exclusive to Indian subcontinent. It is found in India, it is found in Bhutan and in Nepal. It is found in India, it is found in Bhutan and in Nepal. Now with respect to dancing deer, you can also write what kind of species it is. It is endangered. Very specific, very important and exclusive to this area. Right? Next, another important national park of the northeast that we are having is Kaziranga and Manas. First discuss about Kaziranga National Park. Now this Kaziranga National Park is important for the one-horned rhinos. It is one of the rarest sites to spot one-horned rhinos in the Kaziranga National Park. It is located in Assam. It is located in Assam. Important for and the rivers which are uninundating this area are Brahmaputra. The areas which are uninundated are Brahmaputra, which is very important and one of the mighty river of the northeast, and forming a very prominent deltaic region. What happens when they form a deltaic region? This is very important for your paddy cultivation and your jute cultivation. So this is all with respect to the Northeast National Parks that we can discuss. Next, we will come to the national parks of West Bengal, National Park of the Southern India, right? First of all, write all these details in your words. Please jot down all the details which are written on the board in your words. Okay, so we can talk about more national park. One you can add in here, Manas National Park also. Please add Manas National Park in Assam only. Basically, it is lying at the border of Bhutan and Assam. Lying at the border of Bhutan and Assam. Manas National Park. Okay, coming to the South India, I hope that you have written this. I hope that you have written this now. Coming to the South India, we are having in the national park in South India, we are covering Mukurti National Park. Now, this particular Mukurti National Park is basically right now, it is important for Nilgiri Tahar. Nilgiri Tahar is important. It looks like a goat, a mountain goat, and it is an only animal with the hooves. Only animal in the southern India with the hooves. Its IUCN status is endangered. IUCN status is endangered. And it is considered and it is considered a state animal of Tamil Nadu. Recently, Tamil Nadu has also introduced a project known as Nilgiri Tahar project in order to conserve it. The name is Project Nilgiri. The name is Project Nilgiri in order to conserve the species Nilgiri Tahar, right? Okay. So these are some of the national parks that we can discuss over here. I hope that you have written. Not all of them we can discuss now, but yes, few of them that we have discussed have been important, and there has been in news. It has been there in news. So let's come to the wildlife sanctuaries now. Now talk about the wildlife sanctuaries. Now, just like the protected area national park, wildlife sanctuaries is also important. Again, it is of the high level 2 has been given to the wildlife sanctuary in terms of the protection, because wildlife sanctuaries can be converted into national parks, right? Whenever there is anything which is of ecological importance, any species which is found degraded. So if any faunal or flora species which is important, or the whole area there is any issue with respect to it, that then we can definitely upgrade the wildlife sanctuaries to national park or any other area. Even if it's not a wildlife sanctuary, we can upgrade it to a national park. Now talking about the wildlife sanctuary right now, it is a protected area where wildlife and their habitats are conserved. It is an area where wildlife and habitats are conserved. It is an area where wildlife and habitats are conserved. First of these areas are set aside. These areas are set aside for protection of. These areas are set aside for the protection of specific species. These are set aside for the protection of specific species. One thing which is very important here is that you have to protect particular species which is degrading in wildlife sanctuary, but in the national park that is not the case. Okay, national park means the whole ecosystem must be degrading. That's why you are making an, maybe many habitats are being disturbed at the same time. That's why you're making a national park. But here the wildlife sanctuaries has been taken more care of. Okay, they are conserved. Full stop. These areas are set aside for protection of specific species, and human activities are regulated. And human activities and human activities are regulated in order to preserve, and human activities are regulated in order to ensure the preservation of wildlife. In order to ensure preservation of wildlife. In order to ensure preservation of wildlife. Right? Next, key features. Write down the key features. Same as national park, the kind of features that we have done yesterday. क्या किया था? Hunting and poaching not allowed. Similarly, is with the wildlife sanctuary. Hunting and poaching not allowed. But what is there? Some sort of relaxation is still given in the wildlife sanctuary. Right? We will see where the relaxation has been given. But definitely here also hunting and poaching is not allowed. For example, in any wildlife sanctuary, if you try to, there are red sandalwoods. Red sandalwoods. And if you try to go and extract them, that is not at all allowed. Why? Because red sandalwood in the wildlife, it's not allowed. It is illegal to extract any kind of red sandalwood when it is in the wildlife. Wildlife means that अगर वो naturally आपका grow करा है. I'm not talking about the private cultivated land. Okay, I'm talking about the red sandalwood when it is found in a wild specimens. When found in a wild specimens, so it cannot be extracted in any case, right? So wildlife sanctuary में क्या है that any time any person cannot just go and hunt etc. This is not allowed. For example, national park में there is a strict prohibition on the grazing. यहाँ पे some sort of grazing is allowed. Some sort of grazing is allowed. National park में बिल्कुल भी allowed नहीं है, right? So this is the kind of a differentiation that both are having. Right on. First of all, who is declaring any area as a wildlife sanctuary? Central government and state government. Right down. The state government and central government declare the intention to constitute. State government and the central government declare the intention to constitute an area an area an area as wildlife sanctuary if it is of adequate comma adequate ecological, comma, if it is of adequate ecological, comma, faunal, comma, floral, comma, geomorphological, comma, natural or zoological significance. What are the significance that we have taken? जो कल हमने national park में लिए थे, same significance we are taking here in the wildlife sanctuary. If the central government or the state government finds that an area should be declared on the basis of adequate ecological importance, floral and faunal species, on the basis of floral, faunal species, important floral and faunal species, right? Third लिखिए geomorphological or natural or zoological significance, for natural or zoological significance. And the last one, what you are writing? Geomorphological significance should be considered as, it should be, इनमें से कोई भी reason होगा, it should be considered as the right category or an apt category for being declared as wildlife sanctuary. Declared as wildlife sanctuary. Under which act we are declaring it? It is under Wildlife Protection Act 1970. It is declared under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Right? Write down next. No construction of tourist lodges is allowed. No construction of tourist lodges is allowed. Write down. In wildlife sanctuary, write down. No construction of tourist lodges is allowed. Tourist lodges allowed. Next, write down. Next, write down. The boundary may not be changed unless recommended by the boundary may not be changed unless recommended by NBWL, which is your National Board for Wildlife. Have they also given you the assignment on it that you have to do what? You need to do some sort of preparation on it. What sort of preparation? You need to understand whether it's a statutory body or which body. Okay, so discussing about this, it is a statutory body. So declared under which act? WPA Act only, 1972. Who heads this? Your Prime Minister heads this. Heads the body. Important for, these informations are very important for the police. Right? While you are preparing for this geography optional, you can also look the areas which are also important for the prelims and you can revise them. Now, next, write down. The Chief Wildlife Warden, with the prior approval of state government, okay, the Chief Wildlife Warden, with the prior approval of state government, can grant a permit to a person to pick, comma, uproot, comma, acquire, comma, collect, and transport specified plants from the forest land. Write down next. This is allowed for purpose. Such as education, comma, scientific research, etc. Okay. So wildlife में क्या allowed है? Regulated entries are allowed. That is what I was telling you. That there are strict actions to be taken here also, but not as stringent as strict as national parks. Right. So the kind of the restrictions which are being imposed on the wildlife sanctuaries, they are not as strict as a national park. They are still relaxed. So write down regulated entry and human activities allowed. Please use the word regulated here. I'm not saying there is a free movement of the people here, but yes, regulated entry and the movement of the people is allowed. Regulated entry and movement of the people is allowed. Write down regulated entry and the movement of the people is allowed. Write down next. Tourism and research is allowed. Grazing may be allowed. Tourism and research is allowed. Write down. Tourism, ecotourism, write down, is allowed. And again, grazing, limited. Write down limited grazing is allowed. Limited grazing is. And both are protected under which act? In fact, both are declared as national park or wildlife sanctuaries under which act? 1972. WPA Act 1972. Right? So this is what with respect to this. Okay. Now coming to the next part is what we are going to discuss is biosphere reserve. Again important, biosphere reserve is also another kind of a protected area. How do we declare biosphere reserve and where the concept is stemming from? So the point is, biosphere reserve was a concept which have been declared and started by UNESCO MAP program. There was a program which you call it as UNESCO's Men and Biosphere program. Men and Biosphere program, under which different areas were seen as important areas, important sense of ecological importance, highly sensitive areas, right? The areas which are having a fragile ecosystem, yet they are very important for the nature and for the whole ecosystem. It was important to identify them so that UNESCO can do what? UNESCO can declare them as an important area, and then the kind of a monitoring and the regulation can start in particular biosphere reserve. For example, one of the important biosphere reserve that we are having is Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. No doubt why Nilgiri is a biosphere reserve, because it is having a lot of endemic species. It is covering a larger area, which is it is sharing the this area it spread from the Karnataka to the Tamil Nadu to Kerala. So all of these considered, this becomes important to declare biosphere reserve. Then recently we have also added cold desert biosphere. Cold desert in Himachal Pradesh has been declared as a biosphere reserve recently in 2025, owing to its ecological sensitivity and importance. So this is important to note why you are declaring a biosphere reserve as a biosphere reserve. Now there is a marine biosphere reserve that we are having, which is your Gulf of Mannar. Again, important and needs lot of protection because of species which are coming over here and adding the value to the ecosystem, which is dugong and different turtles, olive ridley turtles, right? So we'll be talking about all of this. This is just an introduction that I've given. We'll be talking about all of this program, why it started, how the origination took place, etc. Right? First, write about biosphere reserve. What is biosphere reserve? Please start with the heading biosphere reserve. Start with the heading biosphere reserves. Right on. Biosphere reserve. Okay. They are special areas that aim to conserve. They are special area that aim to conserve biodiversity. These are special areas that aim to conserve biodiversity, while also integrating human activity, while also integrating human activity, while also integrating human activity, right? It is trying to do what? It is aiming to conserve biodiversity while also integrating human activity. You have to integrate human activity in this, while also integrating human activity. So what we are trying to say? We're trying to say that we are not only conserving the biodiversity, we are also trying to note that there is a livelihood which is dependent on this area. See, these things are so complicated, so interlinked that you cannot separate them strictly, right? There is no strict separation between them. Then conservation ho raha hai and then there is no economic benefit which is drawn out of it. It cannot happen because a lot of people will still depend on it, on the livelihoods. Okay, so it is important to note that it is, you have to always integrate the human activity in a sustainable way. But how we are integrating it? In a sustainable way, integrating human activity in a sustainable way. That is important point to note. We will not recklessly use the nature's resources. That is not even advised, right? So write down, they promote a balanced relationship between nature. They promote a balance. Who promotes it? Biosphere reserves. They promote a balanced relationship. They promote a balanced relationship between nature. They promote a balanced relationship between nature and people through conservation, comma, development and research. They promote the relationship, they promote a balanced relationship between both nature and the humans through conservation, through development and research. Now write down, biosphere reserve is an international designation. Who is designating it? Please understand, this is an important prelims question also which came, wherein they were asking about who designates a biosphere reserve. So it was written WPA Act, right? So people got confused how it can be. A lot of people got confused that yes, it's right, but please understand there are two statements which I'm going to write. If I say they're designated by WPA, that is wrong because designation is done by UNESCO map program. UNESCO map, right? But if I say they are protected under WPA Act, if I change the statement, instead of designation, I am writing protected. So this statement is correct, right? Because yes, they are protected under under WPA only, right? So likhiye, BR is an international designation by UNESCO for representative parts. Write down, VR is an international designation by UNESCO for representative parts of natural. VR is an international designation by UNESCO for representative part of natural and cultural landscape. I'm again repeating, Biosphere Reserve has been designated by UNESCO MAP program, and they have been designated for natural and cultural landscape. They have been designated for representative parts of natural and cultural landscape extending over large areas of terrestrial, coastal / marine ecosystem. Write down. Second point, biosphere reserve are designated to deal with. Biosphere reserve are designated to deal with one of the most important questions of reconciling the conservation of biodiversity, for reconciling the conservation of biodiversity, the quest for economic and social development, and and the quest for social and economic development and maintenance of associated cultural values and maintenance of associated cultural values. Thus, BRs are both important. BRs are both important for people and nature. BRs are both important for people and nature. Right? So under biosphere reserve also you have to see that we are dividing the biosphere reserve into three parts, right? What are these? This is the three parts that we are discussing is basically for what is allowed in the biosphere reserves and what is not. So if I talk about the core area which I'm talking about is where the national parks are located. So now you may be very confused, ma'am. The two things you are talking about two things. One is national park and biosphere reserve. So point is that there could be a possibility that because biosphere reserves are area constituted of actually expanded into a very large area, right? So when I'm talking about biosphere reserve, they are expanded up to a very large area, right? Biosphere reserves are expanded up to a very large area. When I talk for about this, so they might cover 2 or 3 national parks. They might cover, they might not cover. That is not necessary. They should cover only, and then there will be definitely a wildlife sanctuary under it, a community reserve under it. So these all bird sanctuaries etc. can present under one biosphere reserve. So one biosphere reserve which is expanded up to a very large area can constitute of national parks, wildlife sanctuary, and bird sanctuary as well, right? Community reserves or conservation reserves or sacred groves. So there could be many kind of a protected sites which can be present in this. Now it is considered as a part of a core. You consider and you cover it in the part of the core. This is your core area, right? which is having strict rules. With respect to the core area, you are having strict rules and regulations. But when I talk about the buffer area is bit relaxed in terms of the rules and restrictions that one is imposing on the people. So there is some sort of human activities are allowed in buffer area. This is the area which is covering the core area. Human settlements allowed, लेकिन बहुत कम, very rare, very less. Tourism allowed. Education in this area is allowed. Now next is your transitional zone. Now talking about the transition zone, again same thing. Your tourism and recreation is allowed, your education is allowed, right? So human settlement is allowed. Definitely you will see more of human settlement here with respect to the buffer area. You can see a lot of tourism, human settlements here as compared to the previous one. Then what else is allowed? Your education is allowed, yes, definitely allowed. Then what else is allowed? Your tourism is allowed, right? So this is a very brief view of what is allowed in the buffer zones when I divide into three parts. So this is what you call it as core. This is your buffer, and this is your transition zone. Right? You can draw the diagram. We'll definitely write in detail about all of these, but first draw it. Okay, I hope that you have written all of it, right? I mean, you've drawn it. Now we'll write. I'm not rubbing it off. I'm just keeping it intact. So we'll write something about all of these areas, and then you can we can come back if somebody has not completed it. Then later on you can complete it, right? Okay. So talking about objective. First, write the objective of biosphere reserves, and then we'll discuss about what is allowed in core and buffer areas. Write down objective. लिखिए. What is the wider objective of declaring a biosphere reserve? Right down. It ensures in situ conservation. It ensures in situ conservation at all levels. Bracket में लिखेंगे at all levels. In situ conservation at all levels of biodiversity ranging from genes to ecosystem, right? Ranging from a gene to ecosystem. It ensures in situ conservation at all levels of biodiversity ranging from genes to ecosystem, right? Next, write down. Achieving integrated development, bracket में improved quality of life, developing, write down, developing or achieving integrated development, bracket में improved quality of life for indigenous communities, achieving integrated development. What do you mean by integrated? You can also write inclusive. In achieving integrated development, please write the whole sentence. Achieving integrated ब्रैकेट में लिखेंगे inclusive development for all for example tribes dependent upon the biodiversity or tribes dependent upon biosphere reserve or biodiversity. Okay? So tribes dependent upon the area, right? Achieving integrated development, improving the quality of life for indigenous community, improving the quality of life for indigenous communities living in and around the area, right? Next, widening the understanding through research and monitoring. Widening the understanding through research and monitoring. Why this point is very important? See, every kind of research and monitoring is important. Why? Because whenever new species is found, what we are doing, we are adding to our knowledge base only. Because there are so many species which have been already found and yet to be found. But whenever we do some sort of research, we are always adding something better, right? So this is why the research and monitoring and the advancement is important, right? So whenever we are knowing, there's thing that we do not know and there's thing that we know. How will we get to know? When we'll do a lot of research, when monitoring, so which will be always beneficial for the whole biodiversity, right? And with respect to the people who are dependent upon it, it will become even beneficial for them, because we are not saying that we want to conserve the nature only. But at the same time, we are being inclusive in the nature. We want that the benefits should be shared with the communities as well, right? Now write down different zones of the biosphere reserves. Different zones of biosphere reserves. And people who are preparing for UPSC and they are giving the prelims 2026 and they are in their revision phase, because almost 24 days are left for your prelims, almost 20 days approx. So there's a live classes which I'm taking around 12 on the main Plutus channel at 12. So you can watch that lecture. I'm doing the revision of the environment, and hopefully it can help you a lot in your preparation. So all of you who are watching the lecture right now can definitely go back to the videos which have been already uploaded, and you can wait for tomorrow's lecture which I'm going to take live, and it will be very beneficial, it's highly beneficial for you, because I'm adding up the current affairs, I'm adding up what is important, so it could be a last minute revision. Okay, write down core zone. Please come back to the topic. Write down core zone. What is a core zone again? I have already explained, where the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries are present, and it's just the least disturbed area. You don't have to disturb this area. Write down, this is the innermost and the most protected part of the reserve. This is the innermost. This is the innermost and most protected part of the reserve. This is the innermost and the most protected part of the reserve. Next, write down, no human activity is allowed except for scientific monitoring. No activity is allowed except for scientific monitoring. No activity is allowed except for scientific monitoring. Next, write down, it focuses purely on preserving natural ecosystem. It focuses purely on preserving natural ecosystem and wildlife. It focuses purely on preserving natural ecosystem and wildlife. Next, write down buffer zone. Next, second, write down buffer zone. Write down buffer zone. लिखिए. The zone surrounds the core and allows for limited. The zone surrounds the core and allows. The zone surrounds the core and allows for limited and regulated activities. For limited and regulated activities like environmental education. For limited activities like environmental education, comma, research and ecotourism. The zone surrounds the core allows for limited and regulated activities such as research, comma, ecotourism and environmental education. It minimizes, it helps to minimize, write down, it helps to minimize, it helps, write down, it helps to minimize human impact on core area. It helps to minimize human impact on core area. It helps to minimize human impact on core area. Next, transition zone. Next, write down transition zone. Transition zone is one of the outermost area, right? So write down transition zone. It is the outermost area and it is helpful for, it is one of the outermost area. Again, human settlement allowed. For the education purpose, it is allowed. Education and research is allowed. Education and research is allowed, right? Write down transition zone. This is the outermost area where local communities live and Transition zone, write down, it is the outermost area where local community live and work. Activities like, यहाँ पे अगर allowed है आपका agriculture, forestry, and human activities like agriculture, forestry, grazing, settlements are permitted, but they follow sustainable and eco-friendly methods. But they follow sustainable and eco-friendly methods. Okay. Now write down the criteria for the designation. That can be asked. What are the criteria for the designation of biosphere reserve? You cannot declare any area as a biosphere reserve. There has to be some sort of key points before you, right? So in what way you can discuss that the biosphere reserve should be considered as the biosphere criteria, right? So what sort of criteria that one should have? First is that this area should be minimally disturbed areas, right? For example, the wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, they are quite aloof areas. Aloof in sense that they are protected. First of all, human activities are not allowed in that. Especially, I'm talking about the core areas where national parks and wildlife sanctuaries are there. So, what happens with that? In that way, that first of all, this is the point, and second is that biologically they should be highly degraded, right? Biological diversity is degraded in some sense that they need a extra preservation, right? So, write down, a site must contain protected and minimally disturbed. The site must contain protected, या तो protected हो. It is not necessary कि national park ही हो. Please focus on this point. That is not necessary there should be a national park only. Any sort of protected area should be there, and any protected area is what will be definitely minimally disturbed. Write down, a site must contain a protected and minimally disturbed core area. A site must contain protected and minimally disturbed core areas of value of nature conservation. Madam, the core area must be a biogeographical unit. That means that the core area should not contain only a specific community, right? It should contain all trophic levels. It should be complete in itself. ऐसा ना हो कि certain areas they are bifurcated, they're fragmented into pieces in a way that one particular species dependent upon the food on another fragmented area, right? And even if they are like that, the whole area should be covered under biosphere reserve, so that what you will do in biosphere reserve, you make it aloof. So all sort of trophic levels should be there when you are declaring a biosphere reserve. Okay, so write down, the core must be a biogeographical unit and should be large enough to sustain a viable population representing all trophic levels. Next, the involvement of local communities and use of their knowledge. The involvement of local community and the use of their knowledge in community preservations. The involvement of local communities and use of their knowledge in biodiversity preservations, right? Okay. So what about the process of UNESCO's recognition for biosphere reserve? So how the process is done? Although this question is very unlikely to be asked in the mains, but yes, for your general know-how, it is important to understand how this is done. So once the central government will notify it that this particular area is important, right? We do consider that ecologically it is degrading, and also it is of a high importance. So we would like to make it a, where they notified that we would like to make it a biosphere reserve. Then this list, the list of the biosphere reserve will be given to the UNESCO. UNESCO, on the basis of their own criteria which has been described by us. For example, the designation, the criteria that we have discussed. What are the criteria? Three criteria which I have discussed. That first, they should have a very minimally disturbed protected area should be there. Second, they should have the biogeographical unit. And third, the involvement of the local communities should be there. And then areas potential for preservation of traditional, tribal and rural modes of living, right? All four criteria are important. So then it will be given to the UNESCO. UNESCO will, on the basis of their own understanding, will finalize that whether they should be declared as the biosphere reserve or not, right? This is the procedure, right? So just for your understanding, I can dictate. If you want to write, that's all. You can write down in certain points like 1, 2, 3. You can just pointers. You can write in your own words. I'll just tell you the whole procedure, right? Selection by the site by the country. The national government identify the potential sites based on ecological, cultural, and development criteria along in line with the map guidelines. Then preparation of detailed nomination dossier is done. Then this is submitted to the UNESCO. UNESCO, on the basis of their own criteria, finalizes it. Okay? This is the procedure in short. So you can write down in your own words. आप ये अपने लैंग्वेज में लिख सकते हैं. Okay, shall we discuss more about it? Shall we discuss few of the biosphere reserves which are there? Okay, so you can write first of all Nilgiri. Nilgiri is in Tamil Nadu, right? Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. I told about a specific species which is important to this area. It is Nilgiri Taha, and also it is endemic. It is endemic, right? Next, you can write down Nilgiri is also present in Karnataka. As I told you earlier, Nilgiri is also present in Karnataka. Nilgiri is again important for your elephants as well. Eurasian elephants are important to this area. Next, write down Great Nicobar, Great Nicobar, Great Nicobar. Now, what is important in Great Nicobar? Recently, there has been, this is a talk of the town, which is your Great Nicobar project, right? So, this Great Nicobar project, you can write down, is important as Great Nicobar is what is an island, right? They're talking about Andaman and Nicobar Island. There is one portion you call it as Andaman and Nicobar. So the Great Nicobar is one of the island of Nicobar. So this particular Nicobar, 75% of this area, in fact 85% of its area is coming under UNESCO's BR, Biosphere Reserve. So with respect to how important and how ecologically sensitive this island is, that 75% of 85% of the biosphere, 85% of the Nicobar land is coming under Biosphere Reserve, is coming under UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. Since 85% land is covered, that means it is highly sensitive, it's ecologically sensitive. But recently what has happened, there is an introduction of Great Nicobar project that we all have been talking about. This Great Nicobar project is conceptualized by Niti Aayog and implemented by Andaman Nicobar Integrated Development Corporation. So with the implementation of both, who has conceptualized it? Niti Aayog and Andaman and Nicobar Integrated Development Corporation is the one who is Island Development Corporation is the one who is implementing this, which the short form is Indico, right? So it is a project which is investing around, it's causing an investment of around 1 lakh crore. And why this project is important? First thing is that we have to have a strategic positioning in the Indo-Pacific area with respect to the neighboring countries, right? For example, China is practicing expansionist policy in the Indian Ocean. That's why we require what? A strategic positioning. And that's why we are making this Great Nicobar. We are making this Great Nicobar Island as a economic hub. We are making it as an economic hub. Understand that this is a Nicobar. This is a Great Nicobar. Now, this will act as another junction. Why? Right now, what is happening, when we have to en route our cargo ships, what we do, we either halt it at Colombo port of Sri Lanka, or we halt it at Singapore, right? So what we have to do, there is almost $200 to $220 million is lost annually. Why? Because we are giving the freight charges to all these countries to halt our cargo ships. Because we harbor it here. We harbor it here. Why? Because we are not having a structure present near Tamil Nadu wherein we do not have such arrangements that we can halt it and harbor it over there. So what we are making an extensive area, we are making extensive terminal over here. We call it as container terminal, container transshipment terminal. From there on, we won't be dependent upon Singapore and Colombo port for halting our ships, cargo ships. We will do it here near Andaman and Nicobar, right here, and then we can use this further. Now, what is the problem with this? So when we are making a container terminal over here, this is quite wide. Obviously, we have to take away a lot of land. And land would be used a lot, extracted, right? A lot of trees, etc., would be what do you call it? It would be we will able to take all of the trees, forests, etc., right, from the area. So when this will happen, and when the trees and the forest and a lot of areas will be taken away, what will happen? It is directly going to impact the whole area, right? In the terms of, because being an ecologically sensitive area, it is not easy for the people, in fact, for the tribal people and also for the species which are dependent upon here to adapt easily, right? So what we will be needing, we have to be very, what we have to take extra precaution in terms of the Great Nicobar project. Why? Because it's not about that how much investment we are doing. It's not about what utilities that we are getting out of this project. The point is that what we are doing to the nature. Now, according to the environmental impact assessment report, it was said that almost 2 lakh trees can be vanished. It can be impacted just because of this project. And it has been also said a lot of data has been manipulated while they have given the report. I mean, the project, the people who are developing the project, they have given the report. So the point is, when so much of data manipulation is there, how can you believe that what is happening on site is exactly the same how it has been written on the papers? So there's a lot of difference between them. First is that there are a lot of gaps, which is definitely needs to be the gaps that need to be analyzed, that whether what is given on the papers is exactly what is implemented. And second is what kind of ecological impacts that they are having. For example, if I talk about the species which is highly dependent upon this area, where exactly the container terminal is being made, there is a bay known as a Galathea Bay, right? This Galathea Bay is actually 38-kilometer wide. Now, in order to make this container terminal ship, you have to decrease the width of this, and this will directly impact one of the very sensitive species over here, which you call it as leatherback turtle. Now, this leatherback turtle is endangered, and it comes to this place for the nesting. For nesting purposes, they do come here, right? They do have the alternatives. What they are proposing is that we can put artificial lightning, or we can put deflectors over here in order to show the path to the turtles, but this is not very practical because we have not done it. Second, it is not possible to uh, artificially change the nature of turtles, right? You cannot change somebody's nature just by showing the artificial light or the deflectors. Second, what they are proposing is that we can transfer the eggs which have been here to another beach, and they can come at Q Berry Beach is the Berry Beach is there. They can come there and nest over there, right? So since they are very new to this place, I don't know how they would adapt, would they react to this, but this is what they have been proposing, right? So this is important in terms of that. There are certain tribes also which are highly impacted through this. One is the Shompan tribe and Nicobaris tribe. They are also saying that they are alleging that the developmental authorities are trying to snatch away their area where they were residing. They are taking away their area. They want to benefit out of it. All of that has been the claim by the Shompan tribes. So there's a lot of void, there's a lot of gaps which needs to be analyzed. And yes, with respect to the importance that India is seeing, strategic importance of this island, no doubt they are having a strategic importance. It will be very near, in fact, to the Malacca Strait. Malacca Strait is one of the busiest maritime corridors, Malacca Strait is one of the busiest maritime corridors where a lot of trade happens over this particular small strait. Now it will be very near to it. So yes, definitely the movement would be very easy. The movement will be very close. It's just 25 kilometers away from this Andaman Nicobar. So this is all. Having said and done, having analyzed everything, still we have to analyze that whether this project is taking away the biosphere reserves or not, right? So although we are saying that we are grounding the new project, it's it's a 1 lakh crore project, but the point is whether we are developing an area on at the cost of degrading our biosphere or not, right? So you can write down about this project also. You can use it in your means wherever it is required. Write down, देखिए. I'll just make you write small points, okay? Write down. India is breaking ground. Write down. India is breaking ground on $10 billion. You can write down Gulf of Mannar and then write down the small points with respect to this project. Okay, this is biosphere reserve. Okay, okay. India is breaking ground on $10 billion mega hub. India is breaking ground on $10 billion in double inverted commas. Write down on mega hub that promises to on $10 billion mega hub that promises to redraw the maps of global trade. India is breaking ground on $10 billion mega hub project that promises to redraw the map of global trade. It is launched under India's holistic development. It is launched under India's holistic development of islands that aims to transform island into a global transshipment and economic hub. Next point, it is conceptualized by Niti Aayog and implemented by Andaman and Nicobar integrated island integrated Andaman and Nicobar Integrated Island Development Corporation, Indico. Next point. The project includes international container transshipment. It contains international container transshipment terminal, comma, Greenfield International Airport, comma, a gas and thermal project, and an urban township. Next, it has framed initiative. It has framed initiative as critical for. It has framed initiative as critical for country's economic and geopolitical positioning. It has framed initiative as critical for country's economic and geopolitical positioning in the Indo-Pacific area, comma, valuable for trade and military position. It is valuable for trade and military position, particularly in the context of China's expanding presence in the region. Next point, it occupies strategic location. It occupies strategic location near Malacca Strait. I hope you know this Malacca Strait, which is present here. It's the busiest maritime corridor. Okay, so just write down. It is one of the busiest maritime corridor and maximum route. Just understand, 60% of the route is taking place over here, right? So it is one of the busiest maritime corridor. Just near to that, there it will be like 25 kilometers away from it. Right? It is one of the busiest maritime corridor. Write down. Currently, a significant portion of India's cargo. Currently, India's currently India's currently India's significant portion of cargo is routed through ports such as Singapore and Colombo. Estimated in revenue loss of $200 hyphen 22 million, $200 hyphen 220 million, full stop. This proposed container ship, this proposed that the container ship is intended to reduce. It proposed that the container ship is intended to reduce the dependency. The container ship is intended to reduce the dependency and position India as a regional hub. Position India and the regional hub. Okay. What is the issue? What is the issue with respect to this? Write down. According to EIA, which is your environmental impact assessment. What is environmental impact assessment? See, whenever you have to, for any sort of industrial project or for the mining purpose of any sort of industrial or for the development purpose, for the construction purpose also, if you want to acquire a land, right, by clearing the forest, then you have to take the prior permission from EIA. Recently, there was a case also which has been given, right, wherein we were discussing that in the mining case, whether the permission has to be taken afterwards or before. So, in all the cases, even they have given this verdict that even if it's you have not taken the permission, because permissions cannot be retrospective in nature. ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि आपने project बना लिया फिर आप permission ले रहे हैं whether it is approved, whether it is possible to make this over here or not, because you have already cleared the land. So this is ideally, if you see, the common sense which is required in this is, it is not possible. How can the permissions be retrospective in this nature? अगर आपने एक you have created anything by clearing the land and then you are seeking the permission, that is not possible. So it has been rectified in recent judgment also. So the point is that in this case, whether you're making any sort of you're making any sort of construction for the development, for the residential activity, for malls, for recreational activities, etc., right, you have to take the permission beforehand. So what EIE, environmental impact assessment, is seeing is quite different from what these people are claiming, authorities are claiming, right? So what EIA has to say, write down. According to EIA, the scale of according to EIA, the scale of demographic transformation is equally significant. According to EIA, the scale of demographic transformation is equally significant. This will require diversion of 130 square kilometer of 130 square kilometer of forest land. Write down. The project directly affects coastal. The project directly affects coastal and marine ecosystem. The project directly affects coastal and marine ecosystem. Write down next. So 85% of Great Nicobar is designated as 85% of Great Nicobar is designated as biosphere reserve and the part of men and biosphere program and the part of UNESCO's मैप प्रोग्राम भी लिख सकते हैं, men and biosphere program भी लिख सकते हैं, right? It's a home to tropical rainforest, comma, coral reefs. That's it. Next example में लिखिए. The planned shipment terminal, the container shipment I'm talking about, the container terminal, the container transshipment terminal. Okay, the planned container transshipment terminal at Galathea Bay, Galathea, at Galathea Bay, comma, is one of the important nesting sites. Is one of the important nesting sites for endangered giant leatherback turtle in Indian Ocean. For leatherback turtle in Indian Ocean. Right? Okay. Now let's wind this up. Okay, there's one more important biosphere reserve that you can write. There's one August Malay. Right? There was a question on the prelims. There was a question on August Malay also in the prelims. Write down August Malay in Kerala, which is important. Then you can write down Kanchenjunga in Sikkim. Coal desert has been recently designated as biosphere reserve. In 2025 only it has been designated as a biosphere reserve, so don't forget to include this. All right. So there is one important news which was there with respect to the Nicobar. One of the important current affair which was there. It can be helpful in your means. I mean, an optional paper. Okay. So news is saying, listen, that Great Nicobar Island project. What is new with respect to this project? So, Union Ministry of Tribal Affairs sought factual report from Andaman and Nicobar Island administration on the complaint that forest rights has not been settled. So, I was talking about the Shompen and the Nicobarese tribes settlements. So, they are claiming, the ministry is claiming that you have not settled down your uh, the issues with the tribes. So that should have been done in the forest dwellers, forest rights, and that has not been taken care of. So what they are saying, the key point of the contention is Tribal Council in Andaman and Nicobar are statutory body which has been established and have limited advisory and executive power. So the point is, basically what is the crux of this news is that they are saying that the Forest Dwellers Act is there, 2006, which says that if you are clearing any sort of a land, so what you need to give, the compensation, you need to give another area to them so that they can sustain themselves, right? Because they were dependent upon this area for their livelihood. Now when you are taking away the land from them, you cannot say like that, you cannot say that we are using it for the economic purpose, we are using it for the development of the corridors and for the development of the economic hub, and now you can move to some other area. So you have to give the compensation, you have to settle that down. So which was not done. So what they are claiming is what the other party is claiming, that this needs to be settled under the different act. Why? Because they are the tribal people, and that should come under the other category altogether, but not in a forest dwellers act. So you can also write this point that there has been some issues regarding to the settlements which has not been done with the tribal community under Forest Dwellers Rights 2006. Okay. All right. So this is all with respect to the Great Nicobar Island project. I hope that you have understood it. And tomorrow we'll discuss other biosphere reserve as well. There is a question for you that please write down. Write down the question. State the condition of the biosphere reserve of southern India after they have been designated as biosphere reserve. You have to state the condition, what is the condition, and also you can write the species also which were dependent, whether the numbers has been increased or decreased, whatever has been done with respect to them, you have to mention clearly. Okay. All right, thank you so much, class.